is. We are just right around the corner from spring training. We'll be there before you know it. Can't wait to get out there and excited to see what this team is capable of doing despite their, lack of activity in the offseason. We'll talk to this guy about it. Knows a thing or two about the world of baseball. He's with us on the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook Hotline. Matt Snyder of CBS Sports is with us. Matt, how are you, man?
I'm great. How are you guys?
We're good. It's kind of a tense time here with the fan base, the Mariner fan base. They're not, I would say, overjoyed about what we've seen them do in the offseason. Their big additions have been bringing back Jorge Polanco, who was wildly disappointing last year, and then they bring in a 37-year-old in Solano, and to this point, that's been the bulk of the moves outside of some bullpen arms. But what do you make from the outside? What do you make of what you've seen from the Mariners in this offseason?
Can't say I blame the fans. I don't get it. I mean, you just finally broke that playoff drought a couple of years ago and even advanced around, and you've got all that excitement, that playoff game. The atmosphere was amazing there, and you just don't capitalize on it. And I know they tried to make moves during the season last year, the Arozarena trade, which will hopefully help them moving into this year as well. The Turner trade, they made a shot, they took a shot there, but it feels like there could have been more done. I know, maybe there weren't fits with the free agents. I know that in order to trade for somebody who was a needle mover, you would have to trade from strength. A lot of people coveted some of their starting pitchers, and if they didn't want to give those guys up, it's going to be hard to consummate a move. I understand all that, but good grief, at some point you've got to do something and try to improve that offense. I do think that there should be natural improvement just from Arozarena having had not a half season, but close to a half season there, coming in with a full year. That should help. I can't see any way that Julio Rodriguez would be worse. Even though it wasn't like by a normal player's standards a bad year by any stretch, it was actually a good year by normal player standards, but he's not a normal player. I do think he'll be a lot better. He might even be MVP caliber. So my hunch is the front office is counting on at least those two things helping them a lot offensively, but man, I feel like I'd like to supplement a little more than that.
Well, how much pressure do you think there should be on Julio, Matt? I mean, it's like you said, he hasn't had horrible years or anything, and I don't want to come off like I'm getting on Julio, but should he be more consistent? If you look at, like, he's had some slumps and things like that, that's and we were saying, like, he officially this year isn't young anymore. We get to stop saying that, right?
Yeah, I mean, you need to figure out age 24, man, it is still young, but they grow up fast these days, man. We've raised the bar to the point that 20 and 21, and he's part of the reason that the bar is raised there, that at 20, 21, you're supposed to be awesome already, and by 24, you're a seasoned veteran. I assume he does feel a lot of pressure. They need to get the start of the season figured out too. With all those slow starts, it feels like if he has a hot April, then that's going to springboard him to having an entire season that looks like an MVP caliber campaign. And I do think that he's definitely capable of winning an MVP and carrying that huge contract. Again, there's going to be outside expectations that say you should play like an MVP with that deal. And again, I'm sure he feels that as well. So yeah, I think you're starting to get into the years where he should feel pressure to be the man. And he, hopefully, having been there a few years, he should feel like a leader when they show up in spring training in the clubhouse. This is my team. I'm the man here. He should have those kind of feelings. And hopefully he'll start to kind of, like I said, get off to better starts, and maybe that'll help him have a good full season, great full season.
Yeah, hopefully. And we were going through this, Matt, looking at the team and trying to say, all right, well, where are the certainties and where are the ifs? This team's got a lot of ifs.
There's a lot of ifs. I was just going to say there aren't many certainty. Even when you have a superstar like Rodriguez, you would say, oh, he's a certainty, but he's actually not. He's kind of one of the ifs.
Yeah, if he can be consistent, from April to the end of the season, okay. And if Cal Raleigh can stay healthy despite how much he plays and how much they rely on him. Arozarena, a full year of him, a full year of Victor Robles. Can Robles be close to what he was last year? He set the bar pretty high in a short amount of time. Yeah. But then you got the entire infield, which is an if. You got Polanco, who's not a third baseman, who's now going to be your third baseman. You got J.P. Crawford coming off a down year. If he can get back. We're not really sure who the second baseman is going to be. It'll be a platoon of maybe Dylan Moore and three other guys, then a platoon at first base of Luke Raley and Solano. If these guys all click, and if it seems like there's more if on this team that's considered a contender based on their rotation than there are for other contending team, legit contenders. Would you agree with that, or are they kind of in a similar boat?
Well, I just right when you said the certainties and the ifs, and and sorry for interrupting, but I did chime in and say, well, even Julio is an if. I don't think there's a single position player on the team who's a certainty. I think every single one of them has an if attached. Even if some of them are smaller, like Raleigh and Julio, there's still ifs attached to them. The certainties are in the rotation and some in the bullpen. And it's what you would have hoped going into the offseason would be somewhat rectified, in that maybe you go out and get a consistently performing position player somewhere, and they didn't. And that's probably why there's so much angst in the fan base. And again, like I said earlier, I can't blame them.
Hey, Matt, one of the ifs you mentioned, Victor Robles, and I think he's the most entertaining player to watch and a very interesting guy. I mean, for a guy who came off originally as a prospect like Julio and didn't really work out, what do you expect from him? Do you think he can? Is it a little bit premature to expect him to be? I don't want to say what they thought he was going to be, but a good solid contributor.
It's interesting because he's somebody that you could be optimistic about when you look at all the ifs on this team. I don't think he's going to hit 328 with an 860 OPS again or anything like that. But it's interesting because if you go back and look when he was in the national system, and this is true, people can go back and look at the prospect rankings. He was a higher rated prospect than Juan Soto. Legitimately in the national system, he was higher than Juan Soto. And the only reason Soto got brought up from AA is because Robles came up to replace somebody. It might have even been Bryce Harper. I'd have to look at that. But went up to replace an injury, and then he got hurt, and that's why the Nationals had to bring Soto up. So if he was that highly touted when he was a kid, the talent was always in there. The scouts saw that he had that kind of talent. And sometimes it doesn't come out for a few years, and sometimes you need the right situation. And he's only 27, or he was only 27 years old last year. 28, it's perfectly reasonable for a player to finally break out at age 27. There could have been something in there where the heap of expectations getting buried beneath Juan Soto and Bryce Harper and Anthony Rendon with the Nationals. They won a World Series championship in 2019. He contributed on that team. He just wasn't a very good hitter at the time. Maybe all that stuff set him back. Maybe 2020 set him back. It's hard to blame anybody for that. But whatever it was, it seemed like everything kind of clicked last year. And while it was a small sample, that talent's always been in there. There was a reason he was rated higher than Juan Soto.
Hey, I'm curious, Matt, how much you think the impending potential work stoppage is part of teams not spending, because that's been thrown out there. I don't know if it's a convenient excuse for teams to say, well, there's so much uncertainty, we're not going to commit, or if you think it's legit, because it's not just the Mariners. We've seen it with other teams that historically don't spend, like the Pirates. I know at their fan day, they had the crowd chanting to the GM, sell the team and all that. So it's not just the Mariner fan base upset with the lack of spending. And it seems like some of these owners are using the CBA that's coming up as an excuse not to spend. Is that legit, do you think?
Yes, on a nefarious level. I think there are some doing it on purpose so they can keep crying poor and keep whining about the Dodgers, and then to a lesser extent the Mets and the Yankees, and saying this is no fair, we have to do something, when they have money to spend. So yes, I think that looking at the CBA, that is a legitimate reason why they're not spending, but their reasons for doing it are not legitimate, in my opinion, if that makes sense. They're holding back money that they have so they can kick and scream about how unfair it is.
Yeah. Hey, as far as George Kirby goes, we were just talking about him. I think it was a Kirkjian was saying that maybe he could be the best pitcher in baseball. And we're going through his numbers, like the walks. What do you have? 84 starts and 62 walks or something like that.
Yeah,
it's just ridiculous. And he only throws a ball if he wants to. But what have you seen from him? Can he be that?
My initial reaction is no, but he's not that far off, and there aren't that many reliable aces. And going into last year, I don't know if we would have said Tarek Skubal was going to be maybe the best pitcher in baseball, and he was amazing. Somebody who can be effective while commanding the strike zone to that level definitely has it in him. Yes. So, and honestly, it might not hurt him to live a little bit more outside the strike zone and try to get guys to chase a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, like I said, my initial reaction when he started saying that was that's a bit lofty, but then I immediately went to there are so many guys who get hurt. And there are so many openings. There's so many guys who get so much better within one season, like Skubal, I just said. Well, his carried over to the previous year. He was amazing down the stretch, but still, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, having thought about it.
Yeah, 3 years, he's got 89 starts, 64 walks, with 484 strikeouts.
Yeah.
So,
and let's point out, in this day and age where there's so much emphasis on base percentage and taking your walks and working the pitcher, that makes it that much more impressive. It wasn't nearly as hard in the 1980s to have a low walk total like he does right now as it is. But right now, it's really hard because guys are taking that many pitches and guys are trying to take walks.
Hey, you wrote a cool piece back in November about the honor of being a Hall of Fame voter for the first time, which is really cool. And out here, as you might imagine, there was a little blowback on whoever the one voter out there was that elected not to cast a vote for Ichiro Suzuki.
It was not me.
Yeah. they have yet to be identified. When you see that, I mean, you wrote this piece about, what an honor it is, how seriously you take it. What does that say to you about that voter, that somehow you find a reason, and it's not just him. We've talked about the fact there's only been one unanimous entry, and that's Mariano Rivera. Somebody elected not to vote for Hank Aaron or Willie Mays or Ted Williams or Joe DiMaggio. Somebody said, I'm not voting for them.
Stupid.
So
it's always been stupid.
To me, it's grandstanding, but
it is.
What do you when you see this one where he got every vote except for one, is that somebody trying to anonymously make a point? I don't really get it.
Like initially my thought was it has to be somebody trying to get attention, but they haven't even told who they were, so they're not going to get any attention. So I would say, generally speaking, I don't think it's that big of a deal in terms of your vote totals, because I pointed out, I don't have the list in front of me, but I listed the top 10 guys in vote percentage in baseball history, and those are not the top 10 players in baseball history, so it's not like it's a ranking or anything. And to get all but one vote is amazing and shows what kind of an impact he had on the game. It's a huge honor. And look, I don't think it means the system's broken or anything like that, because it's really hard to get anybody in any walk of life to agree 75% on anything, let alone 99.7% of people agreeing on something. But if I could take it down to an individual level, I hope this isn't getting too big for my britches, since I've only been a voter for 1 year, but I think it's embarrassing to not vote for him. If you have an obvious guy in front of you, you're supposed to vote for them. And I know some people have said, like, well, we only have 10 spots and I wanted to vote for more than 10 guys, and I know he's going to get in anyway, so I'm just going to withhold my vote for this guy to try to vote for somebody else who might need to vote more. I don't like that either. I don't think that's the spirit of what we're trying to do here. I think you should try to rank your guys on your ballot if you think more than 10 are worthy, and then stop with your top 10. And then we would get the best voting percentage for every guy that there is. I don't like trying to game the ballot like that. But again, I know people do it. That's not for me, but I don't think that anybody actually did that. I don't think that this was somebody gaming the ballot. I think it's just embarrassing that one person didn't do it. But again, grand scheme of things, he got 99.7%. He's going to be in. He's an upper echelon Hall of Famer in terms of the impact that he had globally on the game. There are few who had the impact globally on the game that he ever did in the history of baseball, and he's gotten his due for that. I did really want to see that 100%, though, I got to say.
Yeah, well, and you're right. In the end, all that matters is that he got in. But there are a lot of voters where you see, and they'll make them public, whether it's Jason Stark or others, and they've got 5 names, 4 names. Not everybody's using all 10. Some do, certainly. But I brought up the idea, why there should be some automatic entries, in my opinion. There are guys that you just look at and you go, well, you're being derelict in your duties if you don't vote for this guy. And they're very few.
I agree.
But somebody said, well,
he is an automatic. And,
well, is that feasible? Yeah. Because I had somebody blow back, that's dumb. Then they're just going to argue over who's automatic. I'm like, no, when you see him. Hank Aaron is an automatic. Willie Mays is an automatic. Ken Griffey Jr., there are certain guys you look at and go, come on, there's no debate here about this person.
I agree that there are a big list of guys who are automatics, no matter what. Every single person you said. I think that you would end up arguing, well, where's the line on an automatic versus a not automatic? And then that's where we would spend a lot of time arguing, and who gets to decide who the automatics are. And then when somebody was not an automatic entry, but a lot of people thought they were, then, well, who's at fault for that? And we're having the same conversation. That would be my only pushback to that. But yeah, I mean, you can look at certain ballots and there are automatics. And I looked at the next couple of years, there are none. Mm-hmm. That's where I think there's an opening for guys like Chase Utley, for somebody like Felix Hernandez. There are going to be openings here in the next few years. One of the few guys coming on soon who I think will make it rather quickly is Buster Posey. Then after that, you get into Albert Pujols, Yadier Molina, Miguel Cabrera, but those are 4-5 years down the road. It's the next couple of years, there's time to make some headway for a lot of these guys.
Well, Matt, they don't have to pay you, apparently, because you love this so much.
No, they wouldn't. No, not for this vote.
No,
I would, like I said in that story, since I was a little kid, I used to get out like my Hall of Fame baseball cards and make lineups for every individual team. So I've been obsessed with this for a long time. So it was a great pleasure this year. I actually teared up when I got my ballot.
That's awesome. I love that. It's a great story. What's your favorite baseball card of all time that you have? I'm a Cubs fan, and I have an original Ryan Sandberg rookie card, so that's probably up there. Yeah. But I don't know. See, I have a bunch on the wall. That's why I'm looking this way. Okay. I was trying to see if I saw any that caught my eye right there. Yeah, you grew up a Cubs fan, right? So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I still am. So I got to be there for 2016, and I will drop this in. I'm not pandering. I would love to see the Mariners win it sometime soon, because as a Cubs fan for so long and getting to see 2016, I always have a soft spot for the fan bases that have gone through suffering. Yeah. And it was just not this past year, but the year before, when the Rangers won the World Series, and I was walking around the concourse at Chase Field, and I walked by a couple Rangers fans who were crying, and I was like, man, that's never going to get old. That was me in 2016. Yeah. And now it's them here. I want to see every fan base get to do that.
Well, we love hearing that here.
Oh yeah,
we appreciate that.
And it's true too. I mean, one postseason appearance in over 2 decades, much less never getting to a World Series. It's getting a bit old. But hey, I'm curious from your perspective on Scott Boras. Is he losing his touch? Last offseason was not good for him. Pete Alonso just re-signs with the Mets at $54 million over 2 years. He's got an opt-out after the first year, but it feels like he hasn't done well. But in the grand scheme of things, I know he's had some individual contracts that have been huge. But is he wearing out a bit? Are teams getting a little bored with the routine with him, and he's not giving in to him? How do you see him?
I think that's kind of where it is. I'm going to try to write about this for Monday, so I haven't totally done a huge dive into it. But obviously, off the top of my head, like it's a mixed bag, right? People can point to Juan Soto, but you could also say, man, any agent could have gotten him that deal, because the Yankees were going to keep bidding, and Cohen was not going to be outbid. He had a win with Blake Snell this offseason, but he lost with Blake Snell last offseason.
Year,
Last offseason, he had losses in Cody Bellinger, a big loss in Jordan Montgomery. Matt Chapman was a loss for a little bit, but then he got his extension with the Giants this year. It looks like Bregman might be another loss. Pete Alonso, I think you have to consider a big loss, considering there are reports of an extension that he got offered by the Mets at about $150 million. He lost almost $100 million. So I think it's legitimate to question if he still has the same cachet these days. And again, people could say, well, look at Juan Soto. Well, that's Juan Soto. Come on. You have to separate him out. And, the Blake Snell deal. Well, Blake Snell's won 2 Cy Youngs. And he was bad to start the year last year after it took so long to sign, before he got himself going and looked like his old self again. So I'm going to dive into that for Monday. Or no, I think Tuesday. I think it's worth questioning him. I don't want to go overboard, because he is still getting some guys good deals, but it's at least worth questioning.
Well,
there's enough there. There's enough smoke there to say, hold on, this isn't totally going your way.
Yeah, and I think our guy Cal Raleigh moved on from him. I think he's switched agents.
I don't blame players for saying this isn't going your way anymore, other than a Juan Soto, but nobody else really is Juan Soto. So.
Well, Matt, what's your prediction for the Seahawks, for the Mariners, Seahawks too, if you want, but yeah, I mean, just based on everything that you see, Julio, great pitching, What do you
Yeah, I think the AL West is going to be really fun. I think they're going to contend. I think the Rangers are going to be a big bounce back team, so they're going to be reckoned with. Obviously, you always have to reckon with the Astros. The Angels and A's will be better, but they're still not as good as the top three there. So you're looking at another 3-team race. I'm sure not tired of that at all. If they don't make the playoffs, they're going to tease you again. So I think they're going to be one of those teams that's right on the cusp of a playoff team. If they do make the playoffs, they have the pitching to win the World Series, but they have the lack of offense to get knocked out early. So I'm sorry I don't have a more concrete prediction for you, but I think they're going to be right there again, like right on the edge of contention. If they make the playoffs, they're dangerous, but who knows how that shakes out.
He's the National Major League Baseball writer for CBS Sports. Matt Snyder has been our guest here with Wyman and Bob. Matt, great to speak with you, man. Really appreciate you taking out time as always, and look forward to hopefully talking to you again down the road.
All right. Take care, guys.
Thanks, Matt.